to make sure that they're dealing with runoff efficiently, that they're reducing driveway and sidewalk space because the water doesn't leach properly and goes into eventually into our bay. Yeah, I think the way to address this is really to look to the builders and work collaboratively with them and incentivize them to incorporate as much green energy and just in the way they develop communities, to do that in a way that is environmentally friendly, sound, and efficient.
Thank you. Al?
So what can we do to incentivize builders to incorporate environmentally friendly features? Well, I think there's a lot of things we can do, whether it's tax incentives or easing regulations or voluntary guidelines to embrace best practices from other states. Also, I think one of the things we can do is to strengthen the idea of preservation, because the greenest building is the one that's already built. And if we can incentivize reuse, creative reuse of buildings that are already here, to retrofit them and use them, I think that can be a great green incentive. And I think we also have to think about the siting of buildings. I mean, if you have a green building with solar on top and a green roof and geothermal, but it's out in the middle of a field and everyone has to drive there, then that's not really truly a green building. So I think we need to really strengthen our policies for smart growth so that our buildings are located in an efficient way so that the transportation costs are also minimized.
Thank you. On the last question in the environmental section, and then we're going to be going to 1-minute answers on the last question. This is for Jeff and Emily. There's a pending bill that would bar state funds from being used for artificial rubber turf fields and would mandate local entities to make efforts to avoid using such materials. What's the issue? How many of you support the bill? Actually, if you know about it, if you support that bill, could I have a show of hands if you know that bill? All right, and for Jeff and Emily, could you respond on how many, let me back up. Could you describe how you would improve this? Yeah, the bill, yes. Emily.
Thank you for the question. So for those who are unfamiliar with the policy issue, the question is regarding synthetic turf, which is a type of turf that is typically used for playgrounds or other types of sporting venues that are often occupied by children. The challenge with this is that synthetic turf is made from recycled tires, and there's not a lot of data that shows that this is actually safe for use for this specific purpose. And we know that it's extremely costly to install, incredibly costly to maintain, and that it's not great for the environment. So why are we doing this versus using traditional grass? I don't know, but I'd like to see it stop. So if I'm elected, that's one of the environmental policy proposals that I would absolutely support. I don't believe that we should be using state dollars to purchase or to invest in synthetic turf fields that we know have environmental harm and that could potentially even pose a public health risk to our children.
It's a fantastic question. One of the things you learn very quickly in the legislature is that politics is a team sport. It's not a place where you can flip over tables. It's not a place where you can kick and scream. It's not a place where you can yell. It's a place where you need to work collaboratively and share opportunities for leadership. Delegate Al Carr was the sponsor of this bill one year and did a fantastic job pushing the issue forward. A couple years later, I was the lead sponsor and author of the bill, and we tried to move the ball forward. This year, I believe my friend and colleague, Delegate Aruna Miller, is the sponsor of that bill. And so we have worked together collaboratively and passed the torch from one person to the other, moving the ball forward on this piece of legislation. Natural grass is the best surface for our children to play on. There are ways, best practices, to make sure our natural grass fields hold up. We need to invest in those fields. We need to decide to take action. And we need to absolutely ban public funds for tire-prone and other dangerous artificial turf fields.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna class is over. We're going to do 1 minute answer for every single one of you on this one, and then after this, your 1 minute closing remarks. And we're going to go this way, and then we're going to come back. Okay? So this way for this first question, coming back the second question. Okay? All right. Here's the question: when our behavioral and democratic norms are under attack, how do you plan to protect us as citizens of Maryland from the spread of this blight into our lives, and particularly our kids' lives? And what will you do to help respect for our democracy and Constitution given the current administration at the state level? Yes, Jeff.
Okay, gotcha.
1 minute each.
All right.
You can stand up if you like.
I will. I'm just getting this mic working. The short answer is you lead by example. We've got a little more than 4 months left in this campaign. I understand the norms across this country are changing, and there's a temptation to engage in negative campaigning, the campaigns of personal destruction, using fake contrast to draw, take things out of context and make points that are not true. I pledge not to engage in that behavior. My idea is to run a positive campaign only, to respect the values that our community shares, to stand up for civility. My kids are watching. I got 2 8-year-olds and a 4-year-old. I want them to see me leading by the example, and that's my promise to you.
Thank you.
I just want to echo what Jeff said. We may not always agree on everything, but I am always willing to listen. I've spent my career, I've had the fortunate pleasure of working for elected officials who are just incredible role models, and civility, and we can disagree without being disagreeable. The other thing I just want to say on sort of the policy side of it, it hasn't been mentioned at all, is I would strongly support reforming the gerrymandering that's taken place in the state. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, and you cannot point to a state on the Republican side that is more gerrymandered than the state of Pennsylvania, and I think we in Maryland, as Democrats, if we believe in our ideas and we believe in the power of our organizing, should be able to win elections without drawing districts that benefit us. You, as the voters, should be picking your representatives, not the other way around. And even though that may not directly tie into Trump, it undermines people's faith in democracy when they don't believe that they have a say or their vote matters. And so that may not make me the most popular person with leadership in Annapolis, but it's something I pledge that if we are given the opportunity to vote for an independent commission that would draw districts, I would fully support it and be an active voice in favor of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. In addition to also pledging to run a very positive campaign, as I did in 2014, I am very committed to speaking with as many voters across the community and bringing your ideas forward. I think that ultimately, democracy starts from the people level. It's why I've spent so much of my free time really organizing Democrats across the county and state to really try and get our the policy ideas and the level of engagement up from the ground up. So I'm really excited to be able to run again and to hear from you, and look forward to continuing to engage.
So the democratic culture that we have is not to be taken for granted, as we've seen over the past couple of years. Our civic institutions, our democracy, really depends on us. It depends on our attitudes and our actions. In the legislature, I would be calling on Governor Hogan to make it clear that no Maryland National Guard member is going to march in a war parade down Pennsylvania Avenue. That's the first thing I would do. Second, I want to mention I agree with the gerrymandering. I have to shameless self-promotion. My wife wrote a coloring book with our middle daughter called United Shapes of America, outlining the problem of gerrymandering across the country. And it's a really beautiful book. And I would go further one step as well. I would advocate for public financing of our elections at the state level. Because if we get that right, we're going to get people participating, we're going to get an inclusive democracy, we're going to rebuild from the ground up. As Emily says, we need to make sure that we protect our institutions.
Thank you.
So I hear that question and I think, no, I heard the question. I'm saying, I hear the question as, what are we going to do to fight against the Trumpism is really what it is. And there's a number of things that we can do. First, this is why I'm running. This is one of the reasons why I'm running. I jumped in for a number of reasons. One is that the state legislature is best positioned to counter the Trump agenda. And we have to keep that in mind, and that's how we are going to do the work, and you're going to help us to do it. Other things we need to do is commit to calling out problems where we see them. We are committed to science. We are committed to facts. We need to be vocal when we hear things that are just the opposite of that coming from our White House. We also need to not be afraid to criticize our own side, because we are not going to be able to move forward in the way we need to if we are too afraid to critique Democrats when they need critiquing. Gerrymandering is a perfect example of it. And time's up. Thank you.
So safety and civility, that's the number one platform issue for me. I think if we don't feel safe in our communities and included in our communities, then we're not really at home, and we all deserve that right. I believe that civility really starts with our kids. That's the most critical place for us to look. And we've seen an uptick in intolerance, vandalism, violence, and bullying with kids and in schools. So we need to work on promoting empathy, especially with the grade school kids, promoting empathy, kindness, and work for social inclusion. I also think as candidates, it's really important, at least to me, it's really, really important to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. I would be happy to share more about my low-carb campaign, but that's my commitment to the environment. I'm going to be doing everything I can to use digital means and other forms of sustainable products and minimize my carbon footprint, because I do care about the environment.
Thank you.
As everyone said, we are committing to run a positive campaign. We need to be the example that we want our kids to see. We need to model the behavior that is in opposition to what we're seeing at the national level. I 100% agree with that we need to deal with gerrymandering. It is bad when Republicans do it, and it's bad when Democrats do it, and there is no reason we can't critique both sides, as Leslie said. I'm also very strongly committed to sponsoring a bill if I'm elected, enabling the public financing of state elections. We've seen how well it has worked in Montgomery County for the county council and the county executive, and I think it would do an enormous amount of good to restore faith in our democratic system if we got money out of politics.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think the most important thing we can do right now in the face of what's coming from Washington is to make sure, is to, one, get involved. Through the community, through activism, through any means that suits you, engage with people, get involved, and try to move the needle forward that way. The next piece is transparency. If there's an issue you see as a legislator, make the people aware of it and advocate for their issue, their rights on their behalf. And finally, I think I agree with everyone about public finance. I think that is hugely important. I think that, combined with the gerrymandering, is why so many people feel like their vote doesn't really matter. And I think that regardless of your party, it's in the best interest of all to correct both of those. Thank you.
So I agree with what a lot of my fellow candidates have said here. I think it's important for Maryland to lead by example. So as I look back over my legislative career and the 30 or so bills that I've been able to get through the Maryland House, Maryland Senate, and to the governor's desk for signature, one of the themes is fairness. So I think it was ingrained in me by my family not to take our rights for granted, and so I always fight for fairness to make sure everyone is heard. So what I will continue to push for and fight for is to make sure we have clean elections, public financing. We can't have clean air and clean water without clean elections. That is something that I've been pushing for my entire term in office, and I'll continue pushing for. We have some campaign finance loopholes in Maryland that I'm pushing to close right now, and I'm going to continue that work if I'm reelected.
This is the easiest question. I agree with everything that's been said here. This is a great crowd of people, as I mentioned before, but I'll summarize this by referencing statements from Timothy Snyder, our country's leading expert on tyranny and the failure of democracies, and Masha Gessen, a Russian journalist who lived under Putin for 12 years. And that is, this is not normal. Do not allow yourself to believe this is normal. Speak out, organize, hit the streets when necessary. We must ensure that those tanks that might come out on Veterans Day do not remain in the streets to intimidate us and destroy our democracy fully. So this is not normal. Now,
Thank you. You can keep the mic. You have, now we have closing remarks, 1 minute each. Go ahead, Dana.
this is very difficult. On the opioid epidemic, we need a harm reduction model. We've